Welcome in, everybody, to the Cell Liberty Show. My name is Jeremy Todd, and I am so excited to be here tonight with, of course, Miss Lauren Liberty. Lauren, how are you doing this evening?
I'm good. How are you?
Awesome. And Lauren, say something nice to the people because I'm having some audio issues. There we go. All right. Yeah,
Well,
go ahead.
Thanks everybody for bearing with us. We do still have some things that we're working out on the show. But it's not a real podcast if you don't have a couple of glitches, right?
That's right. That's 100% correct. Okay. Let's see if I can get my headphones to work now. Very excited to bring on our guest tonight. He is a former colleague of mine. As I discussed with Spike last week, I kind of got my start in sales with Cutco, and so Mike was is a district manager for Cutco in the Tampa area. And as far as Mike goes, he is currently district manager for Vector Marketing in Cutco in Tampa Bay. Has a great story about his team's success while he was basically living in the hospital. He's the founder of an organization that feeds the homeless called PB&J for Tampa, and the founder of Grab Tomorrow. Mike's a educator. He speaks to a lot of different schools. He's a graduate of the University of South Florida with a degree in industrial engineering. He's trained over 4,000 individuals and sold over $14 million worth of product. He's provided 80,000 meals, self-published 9 books. The list goes on and on. So I could not be more excited to bring on Mr. Mike Abramowitz. So here's Mike. How's it going, Mike?
Hey, Jeremy. Doing well, man. Thanks for the introduction and setting the stage. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. You ready to talk a little shop?
I'm ready. I'm ready. Let's do this thing. I got my thinking cap on, so let's turn it around. Let's do this thing.
Excellent.
Yes.
All right, Mike. So through getting to know you, what for our audience, we were discussing earlier about our culture in Vector and Cutco of really seeking out personal growth, development, and ways to improve ourselves. And you had kind of come up with a little mantra or a practice called Tiny Actions Daily. And it's really made a big difference in your life. And I was hoping you could share the strategy of Tiny Actions Daily with us.
Sure. It's as simple as it sounds. Tiny Actions Daily. And I started, if you really go back to the original birth of doing small, tiny, simple actions, obviously being in sales since I was 18 years old, we're always taught like make a few phone calls, do the small activities that can create the larger results. And then taking that outside of sales and bringing that into other parts of my life with fitness. I used to be 250 pounds. I was, taking into relationships and giving the I love you and the thank you and I'm sorry's, the tiny small actions in relationships and, and sending a little gift here and there, to, anything in business, anything in money, just tracking my expenses every month. So it just was like this tiny, small thing that I was doing for myself that I never really shared publicly. It was just kind of helping me. And then I went to a Tony Robbins event back in 2012, 2013, and heard my mess is my message. That's really stuck with me. I walked across the 1,400 degree burning hot coals and grabbed my journal and just journaled a ton. And I crafted my message. And that's the birthplace of Grab Tomorrow, where the end of that book is 5 things daily, where if you do 5 things every day that are aligned with your goals, then you'll have 1,825 check boxes over the course of a year. So it really, the birth of this idea of TAD kind of came just from my own prognosis of myself, of what was helping me take complexity and just break it down into simplicity. And a lot of really cool things have come from that. And obviously we could jam on that, but that's really where it started.
Yeah. Well, one of the things when I was in leadership with Vector that is sort of the first thing you learn as an assistant manager, and really, I guess from your first, we used to call them personal consultations or PCs, but basically your first one-on-one with your manager was to start big with a goal and then break it down into, okay, well, in order to meet this sales goal, even this, in order to make this purchase that I have a desire to do, whether it's buy a house or a car or move out of my parents' place, get an apartment, whatever it may be, and then break that down into, okay, well, then I'm going to need this much money in commission, which means I need to sell this much, which means I need to do this many appointments. And if I factor in people who won't buy versus people who will buy, all right, then I need to schedule this many appointments and then break it down into how many calls per day I needed to make. So that makes a ton of sense. What do you think is the most powerful piece of that whole idea of eating the whale one bite at a time? Is it the satisfaction of the checklist and sort of the dopamine hit that you get? Or is it really just, what do you feel like is the most powerful piece?
I think the most powerful piece is making sure that the tiny actions are aligned with the goals. So If we're breaking down that goal, like you said, where I want to buy that car or I want to buy that house, we got to start with the end in mind, where the activity that we're doing is putting us closer to the goal that we set. So it's important to make sure that those are aligned, because if I say I want to buy the house, but my tiny action is spending money on Chipotle every day, then my tiny action is not aligned with my goal. So the alignment between my activity and the goal is probably the most important part of biting the whale, making sure that I'm biting the correct whale, if you will, that I'm moving in the correct direction. I think oftentimes people get so distracted by things that are around them that they actually forget if, I call it the drift. It's kind of like when we're in the water at the ocean and we're just kind of chilling out, hanging out, and we're drifting. We eventually look up and we're like, our blanket's all the way hell over there. It's like, who moved my blanket? It's like, no one moved my blanket. It's that you were in a drift, but you didn't even feel like you were in the drift. So making sure that our tiny actions are aligned with those goals would be my answer to what I think is the most important part of biting that whale.
Yeah, I really love that ocean analogy, because it's almost like if I'm not intentional with my tiny actions are going to happen to me. And it's sort of like you really don't have a choice to be stationary and stand still in this world. If you want to accomplish the things that you want to accomplish, or even just stay put, something is going to be on the outside acting upon you, sort of like that drift in the ocean. So if you're not intentional, I think that's really interesting. Is that built into Grab and the best year ever? And how does that build on, what does that look like?
So Grab Tomorrow Your Best Year Ever was the first book. That was my #1 bestseller that I launched. And that book is literally, it was #1 in short reads. It's under 100 pages. It's designed for someone to be able to do like on an airplane ride, or, just kind of sit down in one sit, read and do the exercises to thrive. But it just kind of takes you through your past, reflections on the past of like, what did I do to succeed? What did I do? What were the challenges I experienced? And then the future, what are my goals and what are my aspirations? And then breaking that down to some specific outcomes, specific actions that I could take towards those outcomes, and then putting the TAD, the tiny actions daily, or the 5 things daily, into actual practice. And it's really so simple, where you just premeditate the list of activities that are aligned with the goals, make the list, and then pull a few of them from the list. So therefore, we're taking thinking out of it. We've already premeditated. So as an example, if someone says, I want to run a marathon, well, they would just make a giant list of all the activities that are in alignment with running a marathon, like running a mile, or stretching, or whatever it might be. And then they just look at the list like, all right, I'll do that one today. I'll do that one today. So that's kind of the concept, where it's like, make the list, pluck from the list, and then that's where your TADs come from. So your TADs come from premeditated, a premeditated activity plan that came from reflections from the past that worked, and habits from the past that worked, lessons from the past that didn't work, and also the goals that you want to create moving forward.
So one of the things that when I left Vector and Cutco that I always kind of longed for in other worlds, but I couldn't find, was that almost instant gratification of the sale, right? It was ultimately, it's a pretty short sales cycle for us. And then I started getting into longer sales cycles, and I would get really discouraged, Mike. It was really kind of difficult and frustrating. What are some things you've learned about tiny actions daily and working towards these big, massive goals, whether it be, kind of a big sale that you're working on, sort of the longer things where you don't get that sort of dopamine rush of, oh, I did it, right? When you're having to do the grunt work day in and day out, but the payoff is almost too far away to see.
I'm so glad you asked that, Jeremy. It came an affirmation that helped me a ton currently to today and in the past is focus on the activity that produces the result and who I become in the process.
Yes.
So focus on the activity that produces the result and who I become in the process. So in order to be unattached from that outcome, I would be attached to the activity that produces the result and who I become in the process. So therefore, the dopamine hit is coming from exactly that. I'm becoming more courageous. I'm becoming more confident. I'm focused on this tiny, small activity that's moving me forward and making progress. So by me affirming that and then following through on those tiny actions, I'm reworking the dopamine in my brain, where I'm like, I'm unattached from the outside world because I'm programming myself in the inside world to give myself those dopamine hits, because that's where self-confidence comes from. Self-confidence is going to come from me holding the agreements that I keep to myself. So as long as I continue to hold the agreements that I keep to myself, I'm going to continue to get those dopamine hits, continue to get my self-confidence, continue to making sure that I keep moving forward and making progress, because the result is irrelevant. And obviously we could go down even a deep dive on belief systems, but on how to rework those belief systems. But it does take some level of using the words you said, intentionality. And the more intentional we are with what we're feeding our mind, the more intentional actions are, because the actions are a byproduct of the thoughts that we have first.
Absolutely. And that's so good. That's a soundbite. If you guys, I hope you didn't miss that. So for those of us out to the audience, if you're live right now watching us on YouTube or Facebook, hop in the comments and chats. We're going to do a Q&A section at the end with Mike. So get some questions in about some things that maybe you're struggling with, you're looking for some advice on, and Mike's going to be sure to tackle those a little bit later. So Best Year Ever was the first in the series, the bestseller. And then you kind of took it on a little different path with stories. And I've found personally one of the most powerful things that we can do in persuasion and motivation, all of those things where we are trying to influence the world outside of us, is to be able to effectively tell stories. Can you expound upon the rest of the Grab series and kind of what you've learned about the power of stories?
Yeah, I spent a year crafting my message. I did over 300 hours of speaking. I influenced and spoke to over 20,000 students in the school districts here in the area, just kind of crafting the concepts for the books and crafting my message. And through that process, I would just interact with so many different people. Obviously, in sales, with working as a district manager, I meet so many students and I hear their stories. I mean, I've now trained over 5,000 at this point, and hearing their story, but then also hearing the story of their upbringing and their parents' story, and it just got me so curious. I think that's a key word there, is curiosity, when hearing somebody's stories. And when I launched the book, I had a buddy, Chris Kermitzos, had a podcast that it was that he never actually publicized or launched, but it was about tell your story. It was called Story Jam Theater, and it was a really cool concept. And it just didn't quite take off, and he just kind of pivoted on some other endeavors that he was into. But it stuck with me because everyone was really excited to hear these stories. So I kind of put two and two together. I figured I had a story. I hear all these other people's stories. So I just kind of put some feelers out there just to see if some people wanted to tell their stories. And it was remarkable. I got flooded with stories. So the first book, Real Stories, Real People, the original, I didn't know it was going to be a series. I just launched an original, Real Stories, Real People. And it was people that just had really cool stories. So from there, a lot of these stories were they were pretty powerful. Powerful not only for the reader, but powerful for those that wrote the story. And from the birthplace of that book, I mean, we're kind of jumping around a little bit. Then I kind of took that book and that got specialized and started thinking about demographics. That's where we launched Redefining Life Experiences, which is this one here. And Redefining Life Experiences came after that, where it's like individuals who had something happen to them and just changing the paradigm of like, there was one story in the book, Arian, who witnessed, he walked in to the house and was the person who found his father who committed suicide. I mean, something that a kid should never experience.
Wow. Right.
Just awful. And for him, in his story, he tells the details of that. But the most remarkable part about Arian is he was able to channel what he experienced and express himself through yoga and meditation, and found himself and found his purpose, and now helps tons of people with a lot of trauma based upon his life experiences. What a beautiful story. So that's kind of this book, Redefining Life Experiences. And then from there, I was having a lot of different individuals reach out to me. I had someone give me a story about being an independent, strong, independent mom, like a single mom raising her kids. And holy shit, if you want to read a story,
Yeah.
Corey DeRocher's story in that book was unbelievable. I mean, absolutely incredible. I mean, she was, got essentially knocked up, the Cliff Notes version. She got knocked up. She decided to leave the relationship because he was abusive, but said, all right, I'll at least let him I'll introduce my daughter to him. And he kidnapped the both of them, kidnapped her daughter, tied her to a chair, and would sell her out to his friends. And she lived in this situation for years, absolute years, until she found enough courage and found the help to get out of the circumstance and flee and fled. And now that daughter is now 18, and now she has another daughter who's younger. She has 3 girls now. She's launching a movie about her story, found herself through yoga meditation, has a whole movement she started, helps tons of people. I mean, it's remarkable. Adrienne, this is Adrienne's book. Adrienne wrote her story, La La Land, and now she turned her story into fiction. She took her nonfiction life, turned it into fiction literary. Look at the size of this book. I mean, she went from writing a story to literally launching a novel. And my goal is with Adrienne is to turn it into a bestseller because, you know, her message is so amazing and really needs to get out of there. And by the way, if you're watching it, Adrienne, you know,
there you go.
All right. So really just awesome. So I know it's kind of a long-winded response, but there's so many great stories of people from weight loss and death of loved ones and overcoming obstacles and situations, like Sam Latrica with cerebral palsy, and now is a life coach and helping people overcoming just so many obstacles. So yeah, I know it's, again, long-winded response, but people have a story to tell.
That you're absolutely right. And what I find most interesting, because you have all of this experience in sales, your entire life revolves around sales and how you can use stories to be persuasive, but that's not what is most interesting about it to Mike. What's most interesting about stories to Mike is the curiosity factor of other people telling their stories and being able to hear other people's stories. One of our big things that the Big Show, Brian Nichols and I talk about, we did a 4-part series on empathy, and the word curiosity, as we explored it, the word curiosity just kept coming up. And you mentioned going into the schools, and you have an interesting story yourself about how you were kind of went on this curiosity trail of freedom and, you know, personal liberty and things like that. Would you mind telling us a little bit about what you learned from teachers and, you know, your exploration in trying to understand the word why?
You know, originally when I went into the schools to teach and to speak, it started with, I just wanted to, I really wanted to go and just help get the word out about our business and recruiting some students. But the first teacher, Mary Diamond, who invited me in to speak, it was to a lower income school in Gibbs High School. And she was bringing me into the class, and she said, 50% of the kids you're going to talk to, 50% of them are going to graduate, and the other 50% are probably going to end up in jail. That's the statistic of the class you're going to go speak to. She said, none of them are going to go to college. And she started giving me a list of like, she's like, one of them lives in an attic with 3 of the cousins. Another one, the dad's in jail. The mom works 2 jobs, has to stay at school, is the last one to leave school until he has to be sent home. And then he tries to avoid the gangs. And just makes do. And these are like the situations and circumstances of some of these kids. So this was my first time speaking, and I got hooked on that. The challenge is I went from this passion of just kind of serving and maybe even recruiting a couple of people to then hearing some of the teachers talk about, you know, what they would complain about in the lunch area. So I would be in the lunch area, and I would overhear them say things like, I can't wait till I hit my tenure so I could, you know, get the hell out of here. Stuff like that. I would hear them talking about bartending jobs at, Friday and Saturdays just to make ends meet.
Yeah.
And I just got like, I knew teachers didn't make a lot of money. I understood that. But it really was paining me to know that these kids that are victims of these crazy circumstances are being influenced by these individuals that can't even like pay their bills, or like are just doing it for a different purpose. So it just, again, using that word curiosity, just made me curious of like, well, why are they paid the why are they paid the way they're paid? Why is it so shitty the way the structure's set up, that entertainers can make millions of dollars and athletes can make millions of dollars, but those that are teaching, the future leaders of our societies and our communities, are making such a little amount of money where they're like stressed out. And then I was also dating someone at the time who was a 4th grade teacher, and she would always come home and she's like, I can't hang out with you. I got to do my lesson plans. And she was like, the state testing is coming up, and if I don't have a certain number of students pass the state test, then my job is on the line. So it's like she has to teach them towards the state testing, which also sucked. And then she's also getting paid very minimal, and also bringing her school plans home where she's not even done at the 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. She's working late at night for such a minimal pay. And it's just like, this sucks. This sucks. Why is it like this? Why is it set up like this? So, from there, I just kind of started getting even more curious, figuring out like, okay, well, not only why are they paid so little, but then it was like our law enforcement, they're paid really pretty little for putting their lives on the line. Like they get shot at and protect us. I'm like, why are they paid so little? And then I just started getting curious of like, well, if the people that teach us are paid real little and the people that are protecting us paid so little, what types of individuals are being attracted to those types of jobs? Right. So then it's like, is the set like, when I was growing up, it was like, go be a doctor, they make a lot of money. Go be a lawyer, they make a lot of money. I have my engineering degree, go be an engineer because they make a lot of money. But it was like, go to be a cop if you want to protect and serve. Go be a teacher if you want to educate and you want to make a positive change or something. Like, I don't know. It's just like an interesting paradigm that was being portrayed growing up and what I've seen around me. So,
and it makes you wonder, where's the incentive for these jobs, right? Where's the incentive to do your 150% and give the most? Because those are important jobs. And like you said, these are the people that are shaping society and shaping our future. Real quick, I just want to note, Jeremy dropped out. He's back. I'm going to bump him back up. So thanks for not even skipping a beat on that, Mike.
It's all good. I know to roll with the punches, right?
Yep.
That's right. Thanks for the heroic work there. Okay. Did we get an opportunity to talk about PB&J yet? One of my favorite things.
We did not yet.
Oh man. Okay. So one of the things that libertarians really value is we realize that we don't really like the government doing things because they're ineffective, inefficient. They're pretty bad at it. And so we as individuals have to step up and fill that gap. Mike has started an organization for feeding the homeless, and we're up to 80,000 meals now. Is that right?
89,800. So we're closing in on 90,000. We really would love to hit that 100,000 meal mark by the end of this year is our goal.
Awesome. Tell us more about how you got started doing that. What was the inspiration behind it, and ultimately how we can help close that gap?
Yeah, talk about Tad. I mean, he literally, we had a one of the Cutco students I was working with. Him and his girlfriend just broke up, and I told him, I said, you got to get off self and on purpose, dude. Like, you're totally stuck in your head. We heard that so often. It's like off self on purpose. So from there, I said, why don't we do something? What could we do to get yourself off self and on purpose? He said, I don't know. I said, what if we went out and donated money to, feeding some people? He's like, I don't know. I said, what about a canned food drive? He's like, I don't know. I said, what if we made peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and like passed them out to people underneath the bridge? And he's like, all right, I could get behind that. I said, cool. Let's enroll some of the sales reps and just see what happens. So we had like 6 or 7 people come out. We asked customers and raised up some donations for jars of peanut butter and loaves of bread. We made the sandwiches. And we went out to the community. We had a bunch left over. So I Googled a shelter in the area, Safe Harbor in Clearwater. And I said, hey, we have a bunch of extra sandwiches. Could we, donate them, maybe even pass them out and meet some of the people there. They said, absolutely, come on over. So we passed them out. There was like 5 or 6 or 7 of us that went out, passed them out to all of the, it kind of looked like a prison almost. I mean, it was, a shelter for people. They helped them get off of drugs. They helped them get, jobs and whatnot. And just hearing some of their stories was cool, just kind of doing our part. And then from there, we took a photo. We said, so what do you guys think? You want to do it again? They said, yeah, let's do it next month. So then we made 500. So we made 350 sandwiches the first time. Then we made 500 the second time. And then we started getting momentum. The kid, Jason, who I started with, he ended up moving away. But I kept this thing going every single month, Sunday morning, once a month, 9 a.m. We just got a crew together. I posted it up on Facebook, and some random people started showing up. And I was like, oh, we got some momentum now. And we made about 7,000 sandwiches that first year. And then they wrote a press release in the newspaper about us. And then I was like, oh shit, this is starting to pick up steam. And then the news station picked up the story. And then another news station picked up the story. And I was like, oh, we're heating up now. So then I had to change the name to PB&J for USA, because we had someone in Texas and Minnesota and Arizona and Pennsylvania and all these different states were starting to do some feeding frenzy. It was like, this is pretty sweet. So that's really what just started. Tiny, small, simple, just consistency of getting donations, getting some people from the community. We've now had hundreds of volunteers come out. And what's interesting enough, here's what's interesting, Jeremy. Out of the hundreds of volunteers that come out from ages 3 to age 73, all different ages, and you can watch any of our Facebook Lives or any of the interviews I've done with this, and a lot of them say the same thing. They say, what brought you out here on a Saturday morning or a Sunday morning to make sandwiches? And they always say like something under the umbrella of, I just want to do my part. I just want to do my part. This is just so simple. And it just makes me feel good doing my part. And I think about that so often, of how many people, I don't know if you can relate to this, anybody that's listening, that says, I want to do my part, but I don't know where to start.
100%.
I want to do my part, but I don't know where to start. So know what people do is they fucking complain. That's what they do. They complain. They talk about, oh, I don't like how so-and-so does this. This politician sucks. That fucking asshole does that. And it's just they're complaining. And they think that's going to do something. That is not going to do anything except stir up more emotion and more rage. It's going to get you even more upset. You're not going to draw other people in. It sucks. The biggest thing you could do is if you say, I want to create positive change in something, whatever it is, you do your part. What is your part? Join a movement or start your own. It didn't take much, but that movement, it created momentum. And here's the best part, Jeremy. Those hundreds of volunteers, I would say probably 70% of them never even passed a sandwich out to a homeless person.
Wow.
70% of the people who've made a sandwich never even distributed a sandwich. They just wanted to be a part of the movement more so than the actual cause. And that's, I find, fascinating as well.
Yeah, it really is, because like you said, everybody, there is this internal desire that is unavoidable to pursue purpose. Like, it's Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Once you've met, all the bottom ones, but the top one is like fulfillment of purpose. And it's really interesting, even in the like spiritual world. I'm a Christian who cusses, but it's really interesting. One of the things that I've spotted in very, very successful churches is they put people on a path to be involved and do, like you said, their part. And what does it fall on us as leaders? And if you're not surrounded by leaders who you can just plug into their vision, what is really important to do to overcome that hesitation to take that first step, that overwhelming, like, well, it's got to be perfect or whatever it is? What are some keys to taking that first step that you learned on that journey?
Found it. So this book, this is Bobby Lewis, who did the news story on us, Finding Joy Beyond the Headlines. He's also a Christian, big churchgoer, and he's the one who did the story. So he put a book together of all of his feel-good stories. And I did a Facebook Live, I don't know, a couple weeks back, and the chapter's called Ambition. And in the chapter called Ambition, a sticky feeding frenzy is the name of the chapter. And he did a chapter on us. But what he did was he would put a proverb like Matthew 25:34-40. And he put that in the chapter of the book saying that's what church is. Church isn't going to Sunday and standing, going and praying and then going out and sinning all week and then repenting on Sunday. He says, this is church. And he took his children to the feeding frenzy. He said, this is what it's about. It's about going out into the community and being a part of the change, creating some change. Maybe you're not going to change the entire world, but I could change someone's world. I can do one thing. And it starts there. So if you're listening to this right now, what's your one thing that you really get passionate about? Me, it was the education system. I just got so pissed off about all of that. And that's why I was like, all right, I got to do my part and just at least creating curiosity amongst the future leaders. Because my kid, James, my son, is going to be raised by these individuals. He's going to be raised by the other people in the school system right now. So if I don't do my part in helping create a better community, then what message does that send to my son? What message does that send to my lineage and my legacy and what I stand for? It's probably not a very powerful, positive message. So,
absolutely. And so now to the part I've been really excited to hear. I mentioned last week, I'm a new dad. One of our prominent figures in the Liberty movement just became a new dad, and his son was born with a heart defect, had to go under the knife the moment he was born. These tiny little things that are so heavy on our lives, Mike. You have an incredible story with your son, James, and I just want to kind of step back and tell us the story of baby James, because I think there's this natural thing amongst people when they hear, oh yeah, everything Mike is telling me is great, but then something happens, right? I run into an adversity that I think is too big. And I would just love to hear your perspective on the adversity you, your wife, and baby James faced, what you learned from her, what you learned from him, and what you learned about yourself, that these things work even in times of trial.
Well, Jeremy, I with your permission, I can share. Can I share for the first time something that I haven't shared publicly yet at all?
Yeah.
So I've been keeping a video vlog for myself, a private one, during this whole journey, because the journey did not start with James. The journey started back in when Lindsay, my wife, and I decided that we wanted to start our family after we got married, and we couldn't get pregnant. So she went in for all these tests thinking it was her. But it turns out it was me. So I went out and got a semen analysis, and the average man has about 20 to 30 million sperm in semen. And my analysis came back as double digits. It was 36.
Wow.
And at first, the denial was like, no, I missed the cup. Then I went in a second time.
Yeah.
And it was still 30 something. And then I went in a third time, it was 16. So I struggled a couple years ago with this feeling of being broken, because it's like, no, what? Not me. I'm a man. What the hell? This male infertility thing is not real. But apparently, it's actually an underground whole men of quiet desperation who experience this, and it's becoming a lot more popular, unfortunately, amongst men, and it's like an unspoken truth. So we had to go through IVF.
Yeah.
And IVF, we is essentially, my wife had to get injections every single day and sometimes twice a day, that we had to do progesterone shots and estrogen shots into her every single day, essentially just putting a bunch of bullshit chemicals into my wife because of my circumstance. That's what she married into, and dealing with the pain and the insecurities that showed up with that during that process was challenging in itself. And then we finish IVF, we get pregnant. The first round, it was $30,000 that we had to pay for. And at 20 weeks, we find out that baby's not going to make it. And unfortunately, that was Hannah, our first. Lindsay had to give a birth to our stillbirth to Hannah, who didn't make it, and that was devastating. Not only because of all the injections, only because of the emotion, not only because of the financial burden, but just everything was just so devastating to my wife and myself that I really was in a valley. And this was transitioning. This was 2019, fall of 2019. I went and got myself a hotel room that December. And I said, Lindsay, I just need to go get my own, that December, the miscarriage happened, or the stillbirth happened around October. And I sat down with myself, no telephone, no nothing. And I just journaled and journaled and journaled and read and journaled and revisited my purpose and revisited why I'm here and what I'm called to do and what is in my control. What is in my control? What is not in my control? If it's in my control, I can do something about it. If it's not in my control, I just need to accept it. And there was resentment brewing in our relationship because she felt like I wasn't doing anything about this male infertility, which was creating tension. And I'm like, I went in for all the tests. I went in for all the exams. I went in for everything. And there was nothing that they said I could do. So I started looking into natural remedies. I did 3 years of cold showers. I started taking vitamin C. I was a vegan for 7 years. I compromised that to start adding eggs in. And then I added seafood in. And then I added meat in. Slowly, I started drinking a gallon of water a day. I started taking zinc. I started taking ashwagandha. And I just did, literally, there was a drop-down menu, acupuncture. Like, there was a drop-down menu of all these possible natural remedies that I could do. And so I just started doing them all. I literally did them all. I changed the underwear I wore. And then we went through a second round of IVF. And that's when we got pregnant with James. And through the process of getting pregnant with James, we find out at the same 19-week ultrasound that he was diagnosed with endochondroplasia, meaning that dwarfism. So at the 19-week ultrasound, they thought that James was not going to make it either. So that was devastating news at 19 weeks. And just to go through that again from 19 weeks. And then in December at 23, 24 weeks, Lindsay gets diagnosed with preeclampsia and her kidneys start shutting down. So they had to do an emergency C-section and cut her open and deliver James at 26 weeks. And he was 1 pound, 4 ounces, and they did not think he was going to make it. But they had to deliver him because Lindsay's life started getting compromised. They delivered him at 1 pound, 4 ounces. He was about the size of my hand from his butt to his head. And he was, an incubator. Lindsay couldn't hold him. The first time she held him was Valentine's Day. So it took 6 weeks for her to hold her baby. And she was in the hospital 24 hours a day, would not leave the hospital. And I took 150 days out of the business. I didn't touch my phone. I was just there with Lindsay and James. And then at some point I said, I really, she's not going back to work. I really need to get back into the groove of busy summer season that's coming up. And I would run my business from my phone, from my computer. I would come home. I would go to meetings. I would go back to the hospital. We would take shifts so that way she could come home for a couple of, to grab food or whatever. She could go downstairs, and we took these shifts. We just kind of got into a rhythm. And we were in the hospital for 252 days. So 8 months living in the hospital and supporting each other and just being able to find a way to be present today. To not worry about the stories of if he's going to make it, of the future, and to not worry about anything that's out of our control, just be present with the moment. And through the process, I got, in January, I went in for my semen analysis, and it was up to 750,000. So it went from 16 to 750,000. So it's still below. And then in July, I went in and it went up to 2 million. So now I'm still low, but it went from originally 36 to now 2 million. Focusing on what's in my control. It was uncomfortable doing a lot of the things I did, but we're on the up. And a beautiful and sad is we tried when Lindsay got her period. She ovulated. We tried and she got pregnant, but unfortunately she had a miscarriage at 7 weeks just a couple of weeks ago. But it was miraculous. It's just absolutely miraculous, the whole journey that we've been on. And we're not through the weeds by any means, Jeremy.
Right.
But the reason why I'm going into the details of the story is because the listener, anybody who's listening, you could draw out that it's not all sunshines and rainbows. I mean, it is a fucking mess. It is a shit show. And around that shit show, I've still been able to run the movement and still provide PB&J sandwiches to less fortunate. I've still been able to run my business, and we're nationally ranked. We won 5 national titles in the last couple of years. We're going to be we're over 1.5 million in sales this year as our district team sales. So it's like I'm still running business at a high level. I just started 2 other businesses, a coaching business and an events business that we're launching. I mean, the reason I'm saying this is not to be impressive by any means. It's to say, if you know your purpose and if you know what you want and you are very clear on exactly who you are and are very clear of what your potential offers you, there's no fucking way any type of circumstance is going to get in the way. Maybe a winter season is going to come through and you got to kind of weather that storm, but you're capable. You are 100% capable. And if I know if the shit that I've gone through, if you read any of my books, from death of my mom 20 and death of my college roommate to losing $130,000 in the market collapse. I had 3 rental properties when I was 23, and by 27 I was near bankrupt. So if you really understand my story, this concept of TAD, this concept of knowing yourself, of believing in yourself, of pressing forward, of doing these tiny small things that are in your control, you can create whatever life it is that you're looking to create. So I know it's a very long way of answering your question, but
no,
the first time I've shared all the details of that story.
It was that's phenomenal. And I've loved following James's story, but to hear that it was a much bigger story was inspiring to me, and just a clear-cut reminder that no matter what, you are capable of accomplishing these things that you've been set out to do. And I think the thing that I'm going to take away, one of the lessons I always learned was, what nugget can you pull? It's that no matter what, you were where your feet were. Be present. And your feet were in that hospital, so you were 100% intent on being in that hospital and being there for your family. And then you were able to switch gears and figure it out, but you were always present and where your feet were. Because you knew, and this goes all the way back. I'm gonna drop an 2009 reference here, Taking Life Head On with Hal Elrod. And one of the things from that book that stuck with me the most is that if you're stuck in traffic, just turn the radio up and be happy about it, because you're not gonna being mad isn't gonna move traffic. So you might as well enjoy it. So that was phenomenal to hear, Mike. I really appreciate it. If it's cool with you, I think we've got a couple questions. And so it's time for Q&A with Lauren Liberty. Oh.
Howdy.
Hey, howdy. Here's Lauren.
So I did actually have a couple of questions that I had thought of while you were just talking. And first and foremost, I just want to say thank you so much for sharing your story with us about, the infertility. As a woman and somebody that struggles with infertility, and I know plenty of other women who have struggled to conceive, it is very often, it just kind of comes down on us, like as the person that bears the child, that it's something wrong with us. And I don't know if it's just a pride thing or, an ego thing, that the other half doesn't always get looked at as potentially being part of the equation. Right. So I think that is huge. I think that it takes a lot of guts to even talk about it, because it is something that is so shameful for so many people out there. So I think that's wonderful. Thank you. One thing that I had wanted to talk a little bit about was your PB&J program. I think that is also something that's fantastic. I think it is so prevalent in society right now with the state of just the world economy, people not working, the prices of food skyrocketing, and everything I've read is showing that it's going to continue trending upwards. Do you have sort of any kind of plan for if food becomes even more scarce, for continuing this program?
It's so inexpensive for people to be able to, I mean, you think about how expensive is a loaf of bread going to get? I mean, I don't know the answer to that, but a jar of one, I mean, put it this way, one loaf of bread is essentially 10 sandwiches. One loaf of bread, 10 ounces or 15 ounces of peanut butter and 10 or 15 ounces of jelly. I mean, we could feed 10 people with just that. So it's like, even if we raise the same amount of donations, like for me, to answer your question, Lauren, every dollar that I make from my book sales goes towards donations for PB&J for Tampa Bay. So the proceeds from book sales go towards that. So as long as people are buying books, then we're going to be able to feed some people. Same thing with Bobby Lewis. Every book that's sold, he donates 4 meals. I know we could literally make a sandwich for 25 cents. So even if the price per sandwich goes up to $1.25, which would be a 500% increase in inflation, which I don't think that's the case. But even if it did, I think we could still provide, less fortunate people a sandwich that shows them that they're seen. I mean, it's really not even about the sandwich. It's about, hey, you're not forgotten. Your circumstances suck, and here's a sandwich. Hopefully, it helps.
It's amazing that you say that, because Jeremy and I just had a very long conversation about that. I'm from New York, so like poverty, homelessness, people who are on drugs, or that doesn't bother me. I'm used to that. As long as they're peaceful and they're not, harming you, they're literally not harming you. So now I live in Arizona. I work in Phoenix. There's a lot of homelessness there as well. And sometimes if you are approached by someone, just treating them as a fucking human being. Don't talk down to them. Don't look down to them. Don't just maybe they just want some human interaction, because that's maybe all they have left in this world. They have no possessions and they just want a nice interaction with another person.
I just wanted, can I mention something on that real fast?
Absolutely.
There was one specific time early on in the PB&J, movement, and there was a pretty attractive girl. Like, sometimes you see some people, you're like, oh man, like, you're kind of, but she was attractive, put together. And I was so curious. I said, what's your story? And she said, well, I was in an abusive relationship, but both my parents were deceased. I was the only child, and I couldn't get out of the relationship. And then every time I tried to, I was threatened. And then one day we got pulled over by a cop. He had possession and he had a firearm in the car. And I was guilty by association. So I had to put in jail, felony on my record, lost my job. No one would hire me. No one would take me in because I didn't have any family. So that's how I got here. Yep. And I thought about that, the circumstances of that. It wasn't the stereotype of addictions. It wasn't stereotypes of, just, an F up who's just, floating around and trying to be a freeloader. It was just like a couple of dealt a bad hand, just dealt a bad hand. And that sucks.
Yep.
And granted, there's a bunch of knuckleheads too. Like, I'll pass the sandwich out. It's like, you don't have strawberry? I'm like, no, it's definitely grape jelly. Nah, sure. I only eat strawberry jelly. I'm like, you're fucking homeless. Like, how are you picky on what type of jelly is on the sandwich? Take the sandwich, dude. But who am I to judge, right? So
right. Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, Mike, here in Phoenix, are you doing that with Wes? Is Wes sort of your leader here?
Wes, he did one. He was our one person in Arizona. We want more. I mean, we really want. It's so simple. Yes. It's literally the easiest thing to do, but people think it's so complicated that they're like, oh, I got to really plan this out. I'm like, no, you need to just set a date, raise up some donations before the date, get together, make the damn sandwiches, call up a local shelter and drop them off. It is so simple.
Okay. Yeah. Lauren, let's do this.
I really want
we're
to.
We're going to get to 100K and Phoenix is going to be a part of that, and we're going to help.
We need 20 locations to do 500 in the next 2 months. If we do that, we'll hit the 100K by the end of the year.
I'm in, and I love your answer about the increase in cost. I do think that it is brilliant to use something as simple and basically a staple that's almost always going to be affordable as peanut butter and jelly, right? It doesn't get any simpler than that. And it's almost nostalgic too, like school lunch type of thing,
the fun part is making the sandwiches too. I don't want to. I want to make sure that doesn't get overlooked, because
Yeah.
Jeremy and Lauren, you get together and you invite, 10 people.
Yeah.
Maybe 5 of them show up, but they bring a couple of them bring a friend. So they're strangers you would have never met. So now you have strangers in a room along with people you're conversing, you're chatting, the music's playing. We usually listen to like some classic rock, or we'll listen to some pump up music, and we're just making the sandwiches, stomping our feet, having conversation. What do you do for work? Oh, networking, having good conversation. Like, that is awesome.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that gets known, that aspect of strangers getting together and networking and having good conversation is something that is also very lost in our society as well.
Yeah.
So it's not only that we're doing positive when we're, giving the sandwiches out and helping the homeless, we're also helping people just get unstuck and meet and get out there and forge relationships and partnerships with other human beings, which is also a very important component of what we call a feeding frenzy. So it's a lot of fun.
I love that. That's cute.
I want to highlight something for our audience that Mike said here. Libertarians tend to be a group that views influence as something that only happens on large scale, and we depend on the heroes of the movement or the people with audiences or something big to happen. No, it's tiny, small things and community. Each one teach one. Be around those close to you. Guys, we've got to get out there and create community. And like Mike said, people are going to bring friends. And conversations are going to happen. And this is an opportunity to use the things we talked about with Spike to listen, be curious, find out what values matter to them, and show them how our values as libertarians can meet that. So that's really good.
Yes, absolutely. Volunteerism is a huge part of what we... if you want to take the state out of the equation, then you have to replace it with something else. And volunteerism is one amazing way of doing that. So instead of, people depending on the state or soup kitchens or whatever, if there's more people out there doing something as affordable as making peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and handing them out, think about how many people's lives can be changed just on that one simple thing.
Change 100% begins with us. It 100% begins with the people. And maybe your passion isn't homelessness. Maybe your passion is the education system, like it was for me. Go speak. Maybe your passion is, litter and trash. Cool.
Yes.
You could do a cleanup. Maybe your passion is, sustainable energy. Cool. Go figure out ways to use corn to do something. Like I that's not my passion, so I wouldn't be able to instruct you, but you get the point. Like, if you have a passion that you're excited about that really gets you juiced up, great. Ask yourself, what's in my control, what's not in my control. Not in my control, I can't fucking end world hunger. So therefore I need to accept that, and the sooner I can accept it, the sooner that I can move on with my life. What is in my control? Well, I can feed some people in my local community.
Yep.
Cool. Let me go do that, and I'll do my part. But
one sandwich at a time.
Fuck out on something that's out of our control or out of our reach, you're wasting your damn time, and you're wasting everybody else's time. Stop complaining and start doing something about it if you're really passionate about it.
Yes, absolutely.
Any more questions from you, Lauren?
I think that's it. I'm gonna hop out of here, but it was really wonderful talking with you, Mike. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Well, folks, it is time for Mike's final thought. And our videos aren't playing. Sorry about that. So, Mike, final plugs. Where can our audience follow you on social media, websites? And then I think you got a few things to announce and tell us about.
Sure. So if they want to follow me, I'm all on social media. Mike Abramowitz on LinkedIn, Mike Abramowitz on Instagram, Mike Abramowitz on Facebook. I have a YouTube channel. That's Mike A Speaks. But right now, I would love to give your audience a gift, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So I have a couple of gifts I'd love to give away, just to help them on their journey. So first is Your Best Year Ever, the book I referenced. If they text GRAB, G-R-A-B, to 66866, they'll get the ebook version of this. And I'll also give them the original Real Stories, Real People ebook as well, which is this one up here. So I'll give them that one as well. And then if they want to go to mikeabramowitz.com, and they just enter their first name and email address, I'll also send them this guided journal. It is my top 50 journal questions whenever I feel stuck that have helped me get unstuck and kind of work through them. There's also some thoughts from Mike. The Grab Your Thoughts journal is about $25 on Amazon. Your Best Year Ever is like $15 on Amazon. The Real Stories, Real People is like $10 on Amazon. I'm going to hook you up with all of them for free. Go to mikeabramowitz.com and also, join the text list. And then I also have a blog. You can feel free to check that out and feel free to follow the journey as, more stuff is coming up. I'd love to, support you.
Phenomenal. And I heard a rumor that you have 2 spots left on this retreat. Fill us in on this and how somebody can be a part here in the next few weeks.
So one of the companies I work with is called Better Than Rich. I'm a partner with Andrew Biggs on, and we put on events. We did an event in Orlando, Florida, back in March. It was we had about 40 to 50 people there. It was an awesome, impactful experience. We wanted to do something a little bit more intimate, a little bit more exclusive. So we have 12 spots. And to my knowledge, earlier today, we already filled 10 of them. And I think there's 2 left. And we are doing this retreat in Riviera Maya, Mexico. We have thought leaders from all across the country coming in. We have a private chef coming in. We have this ridiculous Airbnb right on the water. We put 10 grand down on this place. We are going to do the Mayan ruins and have a conversation around legacy. Like one of the questions that we're going to pose and really workshop is, do you remember who your grandfather's grandfather is? And most people don't. So it's like, well, if we're going to be that person to somebody, how do we need to leave this place better than we found it? How do we need to lead our lives in order for us to have that deep level of impact and just really workshop and do that through an immersive environment of strengthening our purpose, strengthening our vision, getting a better relationship with our identity. So it's a 3-day retreat. Food is included. We have the Airbnb included, and it's going to be a very intimate space with some awesome, awesome people. And, if anybody is interested, they could send me a direct message on Facebook would probably be a great way, or they could just go to forestthroughTheTrees.com. We did have an early bird that I think just ended for $500 off. But if you say that you heard it on this show, I'd be glad to honor that $500 off for you. You would fly into Cancun, you would join us in Riviera Maya, airport transport's included, food's included, all the excursion. We're going to do zip lining. We're doing cold plunges in some cenotes, the underwater caves. We're going to do some deep dive purpose stuff. We're going to do some adventure, and we're going to have an entire workshop on Tiny Actions Daily as well, to help you kind of leave into some sort of activity. So it's going to be a fantastic experience. If it's up your alley, I'd love to, see if we could help you. It's November 16th to the 18th. So it's coming up.
Coming up soon.
We will do another event in March in Tampa, but that's going to be a little bit of a different style. But this one is like more of a retreat. The other one is going to be more on like systemizing your business, because like I mentioned, I left my business, but it still was able to produce 1.5 million in sales from me and not being in the hospital with James for 8 months. So talking about systemization and automation and leading through people and leading through systems. So that's going to be the March event. So.
Incredible stuff, Mike. I hope our listeners take advantage. This is just being on Mike's email list, following his website is going to help you form your best year ever, become more productive, and be inspired to become something bigger than you ever thought you would. So Mike, I can't thank you enough. I'm leaving this far more inspired and ready to go. I hope our listeners take advantage of everything you just threw out. Thank you so much again for the time, and thanks for sharing, brother.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, and I appreciate you for doing what you're doing too. Keep selling liberty. That's right.
Selling liberty, my man. Thank you, Mike.
My pleasure.
And folks, if you enjoyed this, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, interact, follow us, Sell Liberty on Facebook. I am JTodd601 on Twitter. We are on the Brian Nichols Show. Thanks and shout out to them. And a special shout out to our homie Brent DeRitter, who started this organization. We are so proud to carry this for you. Thank you guys for tuning in tonight and giving us your time. Have a fantastic rest of your day.